Here is another viewer-inspired video, and the individual's having a problem. The original waterproofing on their deck has failed, and I can see why it did fail. But we're not going to go into that. We're going to go into how to flash around the joist that are coming out of the building. And this is usually going to be a cantilever where we have the joist, the original floor joist is going to be notched a little bit and then coming out. Or you might have a deck where you have a beam supporting the outside, and then these joists are sitting on top of the wall framing. And it's usually going to be notched down. These joists are going to be a little smaller. You could have 2 by 12 on the inside and 2 by 10 on the outside. That's common. But a lot of times we need a couple of inches to waterproof this area. If this is level with the floor, then the water from here could actually roll back into the house. So it's kind of a common waterproofing method. So we're going to start by installing our building paper. Remember, our water needs to lap onto the next section so that it drains away or drains down the wall safely. So in order to do that, we're going to start by putting the lower pieces on first, and we'll do that up here also. Now I'm going to use some window flashing paper. I'll let you select whatever product you want to use. Some of this stuff can be stuff that sticks. It's peel and stick. Some of it could be a product that's going to be a little stronger than the building paper. And it's not uncommon to use building paper. I've seen it done before. They put building paper in here, they flash everything, and then they get one little leak, and that leak just destroys the building paper because it's not that strong of a product. So window flashing paper, and then cut some sections of it to go over. So we can see here where the water from above is going to lap onto. So the water is going to roll onto the next piece and then onto the next piece and safely down the wall, hopefully. So something like this. Put a piece on the top. Again, this is lapping over it. Something like this. Now you're probably thinking, wait a minute, this isn't going to waterproof anything. And I would have to say you're absolutely right, because if we get water on the top of the joist, this is where it's usually going to be the biggest problem. It rains, water gets onto the top and then flows into any little crack in here and creates a problem. I also need to point out that water can roll down the sides and then come onto the bottom. And I know it's hard to believe, but I've seen it plenty of times, and it'll actually roll into the building. It can actually just roll in. So all of these areas here are going to need to be sealed. So after you put the flashing paper on, you're going to need to put some caulking. And I just kind of globbed it on here. We got a big glob of it. Just wanted to make a point that you're going to, as you put the pieces of metal on, I don't suggest that you just glob it all on, but as you put each piece of metal on, put some caulking in the corners, have it come out a little bit, and then squash the metal into the caulking. And then that way you're going to make sure that you get a larger area in here. If I have a piece of 2-inch metal, which is what I'm using in my video example here, then the first thing we're going to need will be to cut the pieces of metal and shape them accordingly. Now I removed the sealant around here for viewing purposes. Otherwise it would be sticking out past all of this stuff. But the first piece of metal, if you could just imagine a piece of L metal, 2 inches long by 2 inches at a 90-degree angle. And if I cut a section of it that was 6 inches, let's say, or 8 inches, all I need to do is cut along here and cut along here and then bend this section back up to here. And there's probably going to be a crease here, but you can flatten that out the best you can. So before you put the metal on, all you need to do is put some sealant behind it, wherever you think this is going to stick to it. And some of the sealant can stick out. It's not going to be a big deal. You know, if you get a little carried away, fine. But don't put barely enough on to make this thing or to create problems in the future. Is the more you put on here, probably the better off you're going to be. So next piece of metal will go on something like this, be shaped like this, and I like to run mine down a little bit on the sides. You don't have to. This is actually could be a safety problem. Metal is sharp. Someone's painting up here and they get their hand, brush your hand up against here, and they're not going to be very happy. So I have actually done this before and then bent the metal over a little bit. So the metal would be kind of coming at an angle up to here. You would just bend the tip of this over and try not to create a water trap. When you bend it over, make sure there's going to be an area for any water to drain out, or don't do that at all. And the top here we have the L metal, and instead of cutting the edge like we did the other side, this one here you're going to cut down the center and then bend this one over, and then do the same to the other side. And this right here is going to make all the difference in the world. You're going to want to put a larger piece. Here I have a 6" by 6" piece, and you can always use a 6" by 2 or 3 inches up here. I'm just worried about the water leaking in between the bottom of the door threshold. Something like this might work a lot better if it's going back further, or even has a tray in here. And I have another video I will attach. I'll put a link in here to that video about waterproofing the metal of the metal that would go underneath the door jamb to protect it, or to protect the framing. Now I need to point out that somebody actually just commented on this and had a couple of questions on that. Do you have any questions about anything? Leave them in the comment area, and try to be constructive with your criticism. If you're telling me what kind of a person I am in a negative form, and I don't really appreciate it too well, your comment's probably going to get removed. But I do appreciate constructive criticism. Now here's something else that will work, and I'll say it will work even better. This is what I've seen waterproofing contractors do plenty of times, and that is to leave a gap. They leave a gap between here. And of course you can see here where I added a piece to the top. Now I did this to give you an idea. If you were waterproofing something that wasn't going to be near a door, where you weren't going to be installing a piece of L metal on the top of it, if that's the case, you're going to need to somehow flash the top of it. And you could do so like this. And one side can lap over the other. This one can be a little lower. Lap the next one over, and then set this one on top of it. Not going to be a problem. But you can see the gap here. And I left an 1/8 of an inch gap here. A waterproofing contractor would probably like to see a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 of an inch gap. You would have to check with them, because what they're going to end up doing in these gaps is, after everything is flashed, they're going to squeeze some type of a sealant in here to waterproof this connection between the wood and the metal. So again, this is probably going to be a better approach, and the only reason why I'm saying that is because I'm not a sheet metal contractor. I'm not a waterproofing contractor. I'm providing you with things that make sense to me, and things that I've seen before on the projects that I've worked on. So this is something you see it all the time on tilt-up buildings. Someone will just come in and seal all of the gaps, seal everything in here with a heavy-duty sealant, something that's going to work better than probably something you can get at your local home improvement center. But seal everything. And of course, seal everything together as you're putting it together to verify that all of these gaps are going to have some type of a sealant in them also. So you would just simply duplicate this process to every one of these joists that are sticking out, and that should work. Now, the last thing I want to point out in this video, and I pointed it out earlier, but you can see here, let's say that we're up about 3/4 of an inch or a 1/2 of an inch, and we're going to use 1 inch decking. This is going to be a problem, you know, or it could be a problem. So you might want to put a little thought into the amount of waterproofing you're doing around these, so that depending upon the trim work and the finish, just to make sure that that will actually, everything that you do here won't create problems for the any type of finish material, including the decking, siding, stucco that you're going to be applying. Also, after you waterproof the joists that are coming out of the building.